I've got to flip it over.
People will think it's funny.
We're running out of time. I love it.
Hi, welcome to Mary Wieden You Friday. Who forgot to put her earplugs in? Well, I'm
you
getting them
having a
in.
detailed
It's sort of like
conversation.
going around without shoes on, shall we say. Welcome, Dr. Glenn Antizzo from MC. Glad to have you along with us today.
Good to
we
be
got
back.
some good business to talk about today, but I have to, I do have to sound off a little bit on this business about the high school shootings, and know for a lot of schools have opted out of doing their their tailgating party. That's like saying to the bad guys, "Oh, you win. We won't do it anymore. We learned our lesson from you." No, you stand up to those bad guys and say, "No, we don't have room for you. These kids deserve this stuff, and they're going to have it." And I would dare say, if I were, if I had a kid involved in this, I would go around to every law enforcement in my neighborhood, in my area, and find people who would be willing to stand guard and protect those kids for their tailgating and their game. And I'll bet you that the response would be immediate and it would be big. That's what I think, because people care about that stuff instead of these bums, thugs. I can't say any other words because they wouldn't be nice. Can't say. Why should anybody give it to them? Why should they win this stuff? It's terrible what happened last weekend. I realize
Caving in.
Yeah, but to cave into that, it's so unfair to the kids. This is, this
It's
is
unfair to law and order.
Well, that too, but I mean,
And the children who work so hard, the parents that have put in so much, the bands that are there.
It's your not right, R-I-G-H-T, but R-I-T-E. It's a rite of passage when you're in high school and college too. To go to tailgating and have a good time and that stuff.
Well, I mean, that was going to be my next question is, what do you, I mean, you think that colleges aren't obviously doing this times 100?
Yeah,
What are we going
exactly.
to do now? I mean, so you're going to say, hey, well, you know what, Ole Miss or State, if there's a problem up here in Ohio and somebody gets shot at a tailgate or something, which thank God it hasn't happened, and let's pray it doesn't, well, let's just shut it all down. Because that happened.
Yeah.
Actually, not here, but it did. I was at LSU's homecoming last weekend, and there were 2 shootings on campus.
Well, I guess I heard there was one. Yeah.
I don't know that anybody was hurt, but there's an area over by the old agricultural coliseum, and evidently there was something going on over there.
Well, Baton Rouge has had its issues with crime.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
Yeah, but all cities have, but still, don't deprive kids and don't cave into
Well,
these
that's
people.
what my point is. Everybody has an issue with crime. It's not like it's new and it all of a sudden happened yesterday.
But don't hurt these kids. Don't do that to them.
Well, as Lance was saying also, I mean, schools should be the one place where you should be able to send your kids and know they're going to be safe. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, this stuff's been happening with a frightening regularity now. Mm-hmm. And it really speaks, I think, on a certain level to sort of spiritual issues, that there's this, it feels sometimes like a cloud of evil.
You're exactly right.
Well, when you had the Symbionese Liberation Army practicing what it did back in the 70s, and you have Antifa running around, the country these days, there's a mirror image. I mean, it's like, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
History has a tendency to repeat
it
itself.
sure does.
You have a degree and a PhD in this stuff. I just have a basic undergrad. But, I mean, you know that. I know that.
Yeah.
If we don't change course and change the way you think, then things continue and they will repeat.
Yeah.
Look at biblical times. This horrible stuff. Speaking of evil, I think that everybody should look at the tape of Charlie Kirk getting shot, getting assassinated. It's
Man, I had nightmares
awful.
about that
It's
for a
awful,
week and a half.
But that is the personification of evil coming upon somebody.
Well,
it's awful.
I mean, it's almost beyond comprehension. I've been angry with people, very angry with people, but I've never been so angry that I wanted them dead.
Yeah, really. Really.
I cannot even imagine what motivates people to do this.
I know.
Hatred?
Yeah, well, a depraved heart, and that's why I'd like to see, maybe, and this was something that made me hopeful that something good was going to come out of Charlie Kirk's assassination, was that the signs of some sort of spiritual revival.
Yes, very much so. That's good.
But.
And sometime, is it later this month? Who's going to be? Charlie Kirk was scheduled to come to Ole Miss, but
Turning Point will
Turning
be there,
Point is going to be there, and I forget who's going to be.
J.D. Vance.
Oh yeah, J.D.
The VP.
Vance. Yeah, because he was good friends. Oh, and Erica. God, that woman. Oh, tears in my eyes the way she talks. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, if I could talk one little bit like she does, she's fabulous and she's dedicated, and I mean, she's just a wonderful, wonderful person. I can't describe her. She's just a fabulous woman. Woo.
Just talking one more time about, what you were saying earlier. What I don't understand is that it seems like a lot of these killings are being perpetrated by very young people who are basically throwing away their lives.
That's what I thought until. But some of these people, Lance had these the other day. We were talking about on Tuesday. Lance, the ages of some of these
Some of
perps,
these were in their late 20s and to their 40s.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought they were kids, too.
There's some. I mean, obviously, there's a mix, but it's happening across all age groups, it seems, with more of a focus on the youth because, obviously, they're out, in many places don't have the the presence of order in case, and therefore these small street gangs, as Sean Tyndall and others will tell us, these aren't the Crips and the Bloods. It's not like back then when you said, okay, well, there's two and they're bad, but we know who they are and where they are.
Yeah.
That's not the way it is anymore. It's just 5s and 10s, and that 5s and 10s doesn't like these 5s and 10s, but tomorrow they may like those other 5 and 10, and then so it's a mix of small groups that have a seeming non-existence of understanding of law and order or care.
They're older. I thought so too, because my thing a lot is with youth crime. It's like, well, what do you expect these kids to do if their parents are out drinking, drugging, and doing all this kind of stuff? Well, because everybody goes, well, it's up to the parents. But if the parents are doing that, but then it turns out that the ones in Leland anyway they're 20s, 30s, 40s. Yes,
from
I was
20s
shocked about
to 40s,
that.
and
yep.
And over just a basic disagreement. Apparently, there was a basic disagreement, and then all of a sudden, let's go start shooting everybody. And there's more. I mean, it just continues, and this stuff doesn't just go away because it happened.
Yeah. And I also think about guns. I'm not in favor of gun control. I think no, I don't believe in that. But I do believe in learning about guns. You should learn to have, because millions of people have guns, and they know how to use them.
How many of those guns were stolen?
But you need to understand about a gun. You need to respect it and fear it. This is military kid talking here. Respect it and fear it. My dad had guns all over the house. Plus, he was a hunter, so I didn't dare touch them. I wouldn't be alive if I had touched them. But the other thing is, just think about this: a gun can get you in big trouble. It can get you into jail for the rest of your life. It could kill somebody and it could kill you. So think about a gun. You want to get killed by your gun?
Well, you saw the article that came out earlier about the individual caught off Shell Oil Road with stolen cars everywhere. One dating back to 2022.
Yeah.
He's just sitting out there. Guy's got 6 steel chainsaws. He's got a chop shop running. He's got money. He's got drugs and guns. And nobody, not one person, I think it was finally a neighbor said, I think that's a stolen car. There was one sitting there since 2022, stolen a couple of miles down the road.
And then he's got stuff stolen from, he's got a trailer.
2019.
Well, he's got something stolen from Alabama. It's a car hauling trailer. That's big.
So if law enforcement, literally 2 miles down the road, Rankin. So if they went out beating up people on the dang border out there, maybe you'd have caught this guy who's been stealing stuff from people. So when law and order sometimes fails you, you get some of the problems we're seeing as well.
Well, he's not an immigrant. This guy.
No, he's just a normal dude,
a
and he does not look like a brain
businessman.
Yeah, he's not a brain surgeon.
No, he's not. Just stolen stuff are us. It's crazy.
So I think it goes both ways too. We have to get back to where law enforcement goes after criminals and has no worry about putting them where they need to be. There can't be any of this sensitivity training.
Right.
Go get them. Do the Tom Homan. Go get them and put them where they need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care what color they are, where they come from, or what the issue is.
Right. Tom Homan.
Go get them.
He's exactly right. Anyway, but anyhow, for tonight though, and I would presume that you, Lance, would know because you're doing your sports show on Friday nights. You would know the schools that are having tailgates, and you don't talk about tailgates, I don't think. And I didn't even know. Did you talk about the shootings last Friday night?
They happened right after we actually went off air. So I saw them as Caleb and I were walking out to the vehicle around 11:30 or so. Twitter, it was again. we don't want to mention things as they happen because of confirmation.
Right.
But yeah, we saw that after the fact, and it was tragic, and it happened in multiple places.
I know.
So you had the Heidelberg, one, and so that was actually on a school campus, and then Leland was after the homecoming.
Oh, and one other thought about that: if some of these schools have said, "Well, we're not going to sponsor tailgate. We're not going to have that on our property." Well, if kids want to have it, they may go across the street and be unprotected. It would be worse because they would be unprotected if they're on campus with protected people. Then they could do it, and everything would be okay.
So, and that's I guess my question, and the good doctor here could probably chime in. Is like, so because there is violence, do we shut down everything that has a congregation?
No. No, like you said before, it's got to be better protection. I think Mary's idea about having this stuff still on campus, if I hate to say it, but I mean, if you got to put in metal detectors at this point, then do it. But at the same time, don't rob the kids of this experience, and don't, I wonder, and I don't know, because I don't know how they do homecoming here really, but I mean, when my sister was homecoming queen back on Long Island, there was a parade.
Yeah.
I mean, and that goes, went through town. What happens in that case? I mean, are we going to cancel that too, I guess?
Just because somebody gets in a disagreement over here that they don't like what somebody says, so the whole population has to suffer.
Nope.
Yeah.
No, well,
I don't know if that's the way we should do it. I can assure you, I don't think.
Long Island already.
Yeah,
homecoming
queen.
They revived homecoming back when I was at Cornell already. My sister was still in high school, and not that she needed me to do this. I lobbied all my friends back home to vote for my sister, and she won in a landslide. My sister was everything I was not in high school. Very popular, very beautiful, and so.
What were you, the Twinkie brother or something?
I was the nerd brother. Yeah, I was sort of the nerdy political science.
You don't get into Cornell without having some skills, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Well, we got big stuff going on. We got to talk. There's so much big stuff going on regarding the Middle East and regarding Ukraine and Russia. And it's up to you to decide where you want to start. Do you want to do Israel or do you want to do Ukraine? Because
why don't we start with Ukraine first?
Okay, because President Trump is meeting with Zelensky today.
Yeah, correct.
And the floor is yours.
Zelensky is coming to the White House today. It's something that's been talked about for a while, and the reason is that Trump thought maybe he had a deal when he went to Alaska. You may remember that he brought all these business people with him and that they thought that there was going to be peace and then there would be some business deals, and it completely collapsed. I think that he was cynically played by Putin at that summit, and as a result, he started an offensive that is absolutely been probably the most intense of the war in terms of an air offensive against Ukraine. He's not only shooting missiles, but is sending drones deep behind the lines in Ukraine. And Trump has gotten angry about it because I think even he is beginning to come around. I think he thought that, as the master of the deal, that he was going to be able to cut some sort of a deal that was going to end this conflict. And unfortunately, he's come to the conclusion that he's being played. So he's going to Plan B now. And Plan B is that we're going to amp up what we make available to the Ukrainians. Trump was being interviewed and said something along the lines of that, he'd spoken to Putin on the phone a couple of days ago and mentioned the idea of sending Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine.
Explain how devious those guys are.
Okay. Tomahawk cruise missiles are a missile that we've had in the arsenal for years, and they were originally designed during the 1970s, and they were brought into production during the Carter administration to deliver nuclear weapons without being able, to shoot down the planes. In other words, you send bombers towards enemy territory, and instead of the bombers having to drop bombs, what you do is you drop these missiles. They look like bombs when they leave the plane. And by the way, there are three versions of this. There's a air launch version, a sea launch version, and a ground launch version. I'll explain the air launch version. You bring a bomber to within a few hundred miles of, say, the Russian coast, and then you open up the bomb bay doors, and the missile drops out. And when it gets a certain distance from the plane, jet engines kick on, wings sprout from the side. The thing sinks down to wave top level and flies below radar, so your enemies don't even see it coming. Whoa. And it is got on the missile, it's got an electronic map and a GPS system, so it knows exactly where it's going. These things can strike with pinpoint accuracy. They have a range, the Tomahawk version has a range of over 1,500 miles and can fly at just below Mach 1. So awesome. these things are deadly. Awesome. Now, as I said before, they were originally intended to send nuclear weapons into Russia or into China. During the Persian Gulf War, we had never fired one in anger before. So in 1991, we took out the nuclear warheads and put in conventional TNT warheads. And we fired them about 15 minutes before the war was supposed to officially start, so they were on their way to Baghdad even before the war started. And at almost, at the stroke of midnight, they were starting to come down on Baghdad. And if you remember on the first night of the war, if you were watching CNN, you saw what looked like fireworks going off all over Baghdad. The reason was because the Tomahawk, I don't know if they were necessarily Tomahawks, but because the cruise missiles were so accurate, they had taken down the entire Iraqi radar net. And so the Iraqis were firing anti-aircraft fire simply because they were hoping to hit something. They didn't know what to fire at. And these things have been the weapon of choice ever since then. You may remember a couple of years after the Persian Gulf War, when President Bush left office, he was visiting Kuwait to get an award, and there was an assassination plot that was uncovered. So President Clinton fired a bunch of these things at the headquarters of the Mukharabat, the Iraqi secret police in downtown Baghdad, and basically leveled the building. In another instance, when we had our embassies in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Nairobi, Kenya attacked in 1998, Clinton retaliated against al-Qaeda by firing these things at a base camp in Afghanistan. So these are the weapon of choice. They are awesome. Absolutely deadly. And if I were Vlad over there in Moscow, I would be terrified of the thought that these things are being deployed.
He also likes to talk about his super rockets and all this stuff, but
blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. If he had them, he'd have been using them.
Yeah, really.
Well, also, that's another thing that's really, I think, starting to anger NATO in general and Trump in particular. We have seen the Russians have been sending drones, as I said earlier, into Ukraine, but they've been sending them elsewhere as well. They've been appearing over airports throughout Europe. Copenhagen has had them twice. I hear the music starting, so I can come back to this on the other side.
Yeah.
But I think it's a probe. I think it's a probe to see how NATO reacts. We can talk about that.
Talk about that on the other side of the break. It's Mary Wieden You. This is Dr. Glenn Antizzo from MC. Don't go away.
The New York Groove, which was the song that made him as a solo artist famous. It's called Back in the New York Groove. Back.
Sing it to us.
Yeah.
But I'll play it. Yeah, it's a good one.
That was Valley Road by...
Come on now.
Oh, good. Hang on. Bruce Hornsby in the Rain.
Big Grateful Dead, buddy.
His son, by the way, played basketball for LSU and had a sweet three-point shot.
Oh, he did, man. Dude could hoop it. And Bruce is one of my favorites, man. He's such a multi-talented musician.
Is everybody going to go see the Bruce Springsteen movie? Starts, I think, on the 24th.
I'll wait until it hits a streaming service.
It's a movie about Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I hate to say it. I'm from the Northeast, but I've never been much of a Springsteen fan.
I'll tell you what. I have this thing.
Heck of an underbite, though.
They have there's this, they have a lot of good music, but there's this one about if I left behind, will you wait for me or come back and get me, something like that. And each member of the band sings a verse of it, and I've got it here. It's just incredibly beautiful.
Well, if you like beautiful music, the David Gilmour album that just came out, that is, he's Pink Floyd, but he's 70-something now.
Yeah.
But he's redone everything and a lot of live stuff. It's absolutely some of the best music that I've heard in a long time. And I heard it on a radio station yesterday that was just playing some of the songs. But the David Gilmour, you can probably get it on YouTube for free. But it absolutely some of the most beautiful music you've heard.
And here's one food note for the day.
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize Wednesday I had a yen for Hungry Howie's Pizza, which is, of course, they've been shut down from the reservoir for years.
Pizza.
Well, I just like regular crust, original crust, very little sauce, and I like anyway. So it's shut down at the reservoir, but they've never taken the signs down because it's up to the landlord that owns that little strip mall by Kroger's. It's up to the landlord to take down those signs. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, there has been one over on Old Canton Road, just by Rice Road. So I went over there. And I thought, well, this is weird. It's all dark inside, completely dark and stripped inside, but I could still read the phone number. I thought, well, maybe they moved. So, I called the phone number and you get all this stuff, we have these things, we have this, that, and the other thing. And I hit a couple of times. It's the same repetitive. And I go, well, this is stupid. The only thing that was open in that little strip mall was a barber shop. So I went down there. I said, what happened to Hungry Howie's? I said, well, they shut down and just shut down. They're gone.
You're talking about the one in Ridgeland, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so I don't know if they're... online you find, Spillway Road and in Old Canton Road and
Somebody
someplace
just
in
gave up.
Gulfport. They just
They said, we're done.
I don't know if they're done in Mississippi or if they're done nationally. But anyway, so back to our really this very serious discussion about missiles and Russia.
And I had a question in tandem with that is, with the incremental to zero gains that Russia has made in the last 6 months,
Right.
As you said, it seems they're probing other NATO countries. But with the lack of ability to move forward the front lines, what do you think is Putin's, if he's playing 3D chess, what is he doing here? If you're bogged down and yet you are testing NATO, are you really playing with fire maybe?
Well, I think you clearly are playing with fire. What Putin's got to remember is, he's got nuclear weapons, and his sock puppet Medvedev has talked about using them, both in Ukraine and against Europe. And what he doesn't realize is that he's got 3 countries in NATO that also have nuclear weapons: the United States, Britain, and France. You could turn Russia into a radioactive wasteland if you wanted to. Now, that's not what NATO wants to do, but any war that would break out in Europe does have the potential to get up to the nuclear level at some point, and you don't want that to happen. There was an episode about a month to 6 weeks ago where Russian drones crossed into a good distance into Polish airspace.
Poland, yeah.
And the Poles were worried, so they scrambled jets. I think it was Dutch and Polish fighters went up and shot a bunch of them down and chased the rest back in. Now, the Russians were saying, well, it's what happened was we sent someone on a mission to Ukraine, and they accidentally crossed the border.
Right.
The Poles said, we've got radar evidence that that's not what happened. These drones came out of Belarus, not out of Ukraine. This is a probe. And it's not just there. There have been drones over the Baltic countries. There have been drones at Heathrow Airport in London. There have been drones, as I said before, over my understanding is twice now over Copenhagen, over Oslo. They are probing all over NATO because they want to get an idea what NATO's reaction would be. Could they launch a lightning offensive against NATO and succeed? And so far, NATO's done a pretty good job of, countering this. But some of the frontline NATO countries want to be able to shoot these things down. And even if it's a Russian plane, shoot them down to send a message that you don't mess with our airspace. In an earlier time, what would have happened was if you violated the airspace, you would have been gently escorted out. But this is getting past the point where you're accidentally flying into somebody's airspace. These are well-intended probes. And NATO has got to be diligent about this. And I know, again, that the Trump administration feels like it's it can do things through diplomacy with Putin, but it's obvious that Putin is really pushing the envelope on this stuff.
Really.
And I feel bad for some of these NATO countries because Article 5 of the NATO treaty says that an attack on one is an attack on everybody.
Right.
But Article 4 says that you're allowed to have consultations. And if there is a violation of your airspace, obviously if you're Latvia or Lithuania, you want to call for consultations to talk about, okay, what do we do next? The problem is that there have been so many incursions that they're having these consultation requests on a very regular basis, to the point that maybe there's some worry that it may almost be a boy that cried wolf, that you're talking about this all the time. So the seriousness of the consultations starts to get diminished, not because the incursions aren't serious, but because you're just doing this so frequently that it becomes an everyday thing.
What do you think Zelensky's going to say today that he wants?
I think he's going to say that he wants the Tomahawks, and that an article I read said he also wants F-16 fighters, pretty advanced fighters.
He's been asking for F-16s all along.
Yeah, no, and if he can get these things, I think that the Ukrainians, as Lance pointed out a minute ago, the Russian offensive is ground to a halt, and winter is coming. And so the Russians will not be able to do as much. I think that Zelensky has an opportunity, especially if he's given what he's asked for, and that he gets the green light from Washington, that he could strike way behind the lines in Russia and take out things like he could create a runway so Russian fighters and bombers can't take off. He could hit oil refineries and oil facilities. He could hit naval installations over there in Sebastopol in Crimea. He could take out the bridge that links Crimea to the rest of Russia. He could take out industrial infrastructure. Even though these missiles have a range that would allow them to hit Moscow and St. Petersburg, I don't think he's going to hit any political targets or any civilian targets.
What is the thing that is holding back the Ukrainians, from receiving the type of weaponry that would allow them to make a significant impact on the Russian forces that are in that meat grinder? And, the Ukrainians made some real strategic moves up front. They flooded a lot of areas.
Right.
And they've, that whole Dnipro area where the river comes to, they flooded. They blew up dams and made sure that it was going to be as difficult as possible for Russia to move further northwest. So what is the holdup in allowing Ukraine to attack with better weaponry? Why are we not doing this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think I've got part of the answer, but I'm not sure that I've got the whole answer. Part of the answer is that, if you give them advanced weaponry and God forbid it gets captured, then they have advanced technology that they could backward engineer and start making their own without having to do the research and design. You may remember when we were fighting in Kosovo, an F-117 fighter bomber, stealth fighter bomber, got shot down. They had to send a commando unit into maybe it wasn't. Yeah, no, it was Kosovo. They had to send a unit in there to rescue the pilot and to blow up the plane to make sure that the Russians couldn't get their hands on the technology.
Well, I thought the initial why we had restrictions on was because that Putin would come back times 10.
That's the other thing I was about to say. That there's worry about escalation, but when you are hitting civilian centers the way he is, I mean, what much worse could he do?
Well, that's kind of what my point is. Yeah, with what Putin has done and the fact that he is not following any type of real protocol. He's shooting drones off all over the place, generally over airports. At what point do we go, this guy's the problem, now let's solve the problem?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And quit worrying about his saber rattling and what he says and just, give him a good old butt whooping.
And that's why you allow these things to be given to the Ukrainians, because that would allow them to damage the Russian war machine in a way. During the Biden administration and for the early part of the Trump administration, we've been giving them defensive capabilities, but it's been a drip, where we just sort of incrementally go up. We should have learned in Vietnam that incrementalism doesn't work. That basically you have to give these guys the ability to hit back, as Lance said, and hit back hard in order to take out the infrastructure, to do heavy damage.
And weren't we worried about the Chinese coming into Russia? Into Vietnam? I'm talking about back in Vietnam. That was the reason we didn't allow more escalation, because we didn't want the Red Army coming in, and they were already doing that.
Yeah. I don't understand why you're not allowing a country to engage in what would be defensive measures. Yes, the stuff is on Russian territory, but anybody who has got a set of eyes can see that this is all the infrastructure that makes the war in Ukraine possible.
But maybe we are worried that the Ukrainians aren't smart enough to do this, or don't want to do this, want to keep it for other reasons, or do what they'd rather do, like smash people and stuff like that. Maybe we don't trust the Ukrainians
Those are all
to do
great
the right
points.
thing.
I think you're hitting on all of them. I mean, it makes total sense. You don't want it captured. You don't know if you really trust the Ukrainians to act in the right capacity, because they hate the Russians.
They're also very corrupt.
And then who else gets their hands on this stuff?
That's just it. But, so I don't know. We don't know. We just have to see. But it's been going on long enough. Way too long, right?
Yeah, no, I was all excited. I sort of lost track of the days of the week, and I was looking to see, okay, well, what happened with this meeting? And then I realized that it was going on after we were on the air. So
I don't see anything that says they've started it, but maybe they have. Let me just go over here and change this to regular Fox instead of business. We've got a Fox on the business station, but we need to go to regular. They're wrestling around about some stuff last night, debates last night in Virginia and some other place. Political debates.
Yeah.
Does Zelensky really need another two Y's at the end of his name? I mean, does he really need two Y's? Zelensky.
I guess the family did very, very well on Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah. So how do you spell Zelensky? I would have gotten it wrong every time.
Zelinsky. Is it Y or I?
Two Y's.
Too wise?
At
Well,
the end,
oh,
yeah.
too wise. I thought you were
Also,
saying too
they
eyes.
changed the spelling and the pronunciation of the capital. You know, when I was a kid, it was Kiev. Now it's
Right,
Kyiv.
Well,
Kyiv.
yes, it's actually the way they say it. It's actually two syllables, but it's very subtle. It's Kiev. You know, so that's the proper way. But Kyiv. That's American journalism saying that. But it's Kiev. I think is correct, but Kyiv. You know, and so anyhow, that's how I know about that. All right, we're gonna come back. We got to do a segment on Israel.
Oh, absolutely. I got plenty of stuff.
All right, we'll be right back. You know who Bobby is, right?
No.
Glenn? Bobby? That's Willie's sister, who she's since died. But Bobby was a piano player.
Yeah, she tickled the ivories. Yeah, she was the one that would play the piano.
Yeah, she
and
played
she was
piano.
good.
You only saw the back of her, but who is it who said when she died she looked exactly like?
They had the same hairdo and same complexion.
But you never saw her
that kind of
face.
strawberry kind of complexion. Yeah.
Yeah, you never saw her face, but that was Bobby. She was great. Anyway,
They
okay.
could have been twins. I mean, she had a woman version of Willie, but I mean, they could have been twins almost.
Well, we got our final segment. Our final segment so quickly, and we had this, wonderful stuff that's going on in Israel. Is it? Do you, I hate to be a nattering nabob, but do you believe that this peace will hold?
The jury is out. It got off to a
Yes.
promising start.
Yes.
Trump gave that what was it, a 21-point plan where he got all the other countries in the region, not just Arab countries, but also Muslim countries like Turkey. And I think that they were working to put pressure on Hamas. Look, this is the best deal you're going to get. So you might as well just say yes to this. And among the things that, have happened, the good news is that, all the live hostages that Hamas was holding have been released. The Palestinians got, I think, between 1,000 and 2,000 people released from prison, some of whom are, serving life sentences for murder. The bodies of some of the Israeli hostages that were not alive have been returned, but not all have been accounted for. Hamas says that it's returned all the bodies that it has access to, and that they would need special equipment and effort to get the remaining bodies. I'm not as convinced that they have them. Because, look, this area has been without power and without water. How would you preserve the bodies unless you buried them somewhere? Hamas has also recently been rounding up and publicly executing people. I actually saw an execution on TV the other night. These are Palestinians that they're killing.
Well, they are. Hamas is a political movement among Palestinians, right? It's
Right,
like
yes.
the new PLO, PLA.
Well, it was.
Well, but it was. Yeah,
It's a
we've
well-armed
decimated all
political movement now.
Yes, we've decimated their leadership. But Hamas is not a sector of people. I mean, it's not a a group of. It's just a political thing. It's not a genetic thing or whatever.
Yeah, no,
they're Palestinians who are doing this.
It's a militia
Yeah,
that
that's it.
basically controls Gaza. What happened was originally there was an agreement called the Oslo Agreement, where the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, recognized Israel's right to exist, and Israel gave the PLO an ability to transform itself into something called the Palestinian Authority. Mm-hmm. And the Palestinian Authority's got some territory that they control on the West Bank, and they also had some territory that they controlled in Gaza. There was an election held. I wish I could remember exactly when. I want to say it was the early 2000s. And Hamas won the elections. Oh, okay. And a civil war broke out in the Palestinian territories between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. And what ended up happening was Palestinian Authority retained control over the West Bank, and Hamas retained control over Gaza.
Well, remember too that there was actually a Nobel Peace Prize awarded in '94 to Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Rabin, and Yasser Arafat for pulling this all together that he's talking about.
And eventually, the Israelis withdrew out of Gaza, and the Gazans were able to run themselves. Now, the people who support Hamas say, well, it's the biggest outside prison in the world because Israel's choked the place. No, you've maybe misidentified the wardens of this outdoor prison.
Really? Mm-hmm.
Because you've got a populace terrified into compliance with these people. Because they use ruthless, heavy-handed measures. There hasn't been an election there in decades. And Hamas basically runs by fiat in this place. And, I realize that a lot of people have been killed, but I think the numbers are inflated. The numbers you're getting are from the Gaza Health Ministry. That's an arm of Hamas. They've got a reason to overstate this stuff. Again, I don't want to minimize the civilian casualties because these people are being used, as I've said several times on this program before, as human shields.
Exactly.
They're hiding
by their own
they've done
people.
That for years.
Right.
They've done that for years. And so what I'm wondering is, who does Steve Witkoff and Jared, the son-in-law, who they negotiate with if they're dealing with Hamas?
Can you imagine?
I mean, who?
I mean, who you're dealing
who are they?
with
I know.
over there?
How do you deal with those people, and who the heck are they? If we've killed off a lot of the leadership, and that's kind of almost ancillary. But we're dealing with Hamas. We have to deal with them apparently. But who the heck are they to be dealt with?
Going back to your original question, though, I mean, the hostages have been
right.
released. The Israelis have withdrawn. So Israel now, instead of having complete control over Gaza, now has given up enough land that it is in control of about 53%. There's supposed to be several more drawdowns, one that would reduce Israel down to 40%, and then an additional one that would reduce Israel down to 15% of Gaza. The eventual plan is just to have a security zone around Gaza that the Israelis could monitor, so if, God forbid, anything happens in there, they can react quickly so there's not another, October 6th.
So, yeah,
but October 7th, rather. But like I said before, killings have started again. There are rival groups to Hamas that have been duking it out with Hamas over the last few weeks. Hamas has dealt ruthlessly with them. I saw a bunch of these guys, about 5 or 6, on their knees. Hamas shot them.
But they're not Israelis. They're Palestinians. They're their own people.
Exactly.
Their
yes.
own people. So
yes. And President Trump has stated on social media that if Hamas continues these killings in Gaza, and this is a quote, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Now, he sort of walked that back a little bit and said that, would not be the United States involved, but he would essentially give Netanyahu the green light that if they could finish the job.
Because he's specifically the day that this all happened, Netanyahu said, I'm going to kill Hamas, or words to that effect. I'm going to get them. They were going to go. Remember that? The day that October 7th of last year, he was going to kill every Hamas member, something like that. He was going to kill Hamas. There's nothing mysterious about that. He said that.
Well, and I understand where he's coming from because he is of the mind, and there's reason to understand completely where he's coming from, that you don't compromise with a cancer, you cut it out.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's what this is. There is no way that the international community is going to allow Hamas to stay in power. And you were asking me about, whether this is going to hold. That's the fly in the ointment.
Can radicalized Islam, can it coexist with a peaceful Israel? Can it coexist with a peaceful Christianity? Can it coexist with a peaceful
Hamas.
Catholic Church? Can a radicalized version of the Muslim faith, can it coexist in that area or anywhere with other religions that are not violent?
No, I unfortunately, groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, all they understand is raw military force. And that's what's gotten us to this point. If it wasn't for the fact that Israel had done such a thorough job of basically leveling the place, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, I don't think.
Right.
I'm not endorsing this. I wish that it wasn't necessary. But unfortunately, again, you've got a group of thugs using the civilian population as human shields that will do virtually anything they can to basically stay in power. They are not worried about their own people. They are worried about losing their power, which is why they will not lay down their arms. They've been told part of the agreement is they lay down their arms, and then the leadership will be given free passage out of the country. But they will not be part of any government that is going to be established to run the place. And they don't want that. They do not want to lose their power.
Well, what do they do with their power? All their places are just trash.
It looks pretty bad before the war.
You see the Palestinian territory, as I understand it, the Palestinian sector of Jerusalem. You see, the Jewish side of Jerusalem is beautiful. The Palestinian side is trash. It's junk and horrible. What did they have by way of any sort of government, any sort of society, anything like that? Can you suggest that there's a wonderful restaurant in Palestine territory? I don't think so. What about their arts? And government, like I say, what about their banking institutions and all this kind of stuff? They don't have
Don't they export
any
mostly
of that.
Textiles now?
I don't know if they do anything.
They did
What do
before
they do?
I
don't
think
know.
textiles were mainly their number.
They grew it.
No, they
from
wove
cotton,
it.
or did they wove it?
I think they received an imported
know.
good and turned it into a finished product.
Who would have said, "Oh, look, I have this lovely Palestinian scarf"? I mean, I don't know. This is the thing that just vexes me is the Palestinians are worth nothing. Oh, excuse me if you're Palestinian, but your people over in that part of the world, they don't do a damn thing except just make trouble and trash. That's all they do.
These folks, like I said, I think that they would like to live in peace. I think the civilians are done with this. There's been word of demonstrations against Hamas, and you got to give these people credit because to stand up to a terrorist group like that, knowing what the consequences could be. It's pretty clear that Hamas is not just executing these people to get rid of these people. They're doing this to send a message to everybody else.
Like the old Taliban, right?
Yeah, in a sense, yes. Now, and this is going to, I'm sorry, Mary.
No.
But this is going to make the next stage difficult because what the plan is that the United States and others are going to establish a constabulary force that would keep order, composed of mostly vetted Palestinians, and which I think is going to be difficult to vet. And an international force will help keep the order there while the Palestinian force is created and trained. And then there's supposed to be the creation of an interim government there. But again, like you pointed out before, who do you deal with?
Yeah, really. That's the end of the show, too. But we ended with our theme song. You've heard this, right? This is What Do You Talk
Oh, yeah.
What Do You Talk About?